Orchids are one of the most rewarding plants you can grow, especially when they bloom. It's not just about the flowers either. It's the anticipation, the excitement, and that moment when you see a fresh bloom slowly open up. That's the magic of orchids, and the amazing thing is there's truly an orchid for everyone. You've got your elegant phalaenopsis, your vibrant cattleyas, your dramatic dendrobiums, your wild-looking oncidiums, and even your super rare species that collectors obsess over. Some people, believe it or not, only grow orchids, like only. Orchids, that's their whole thing, and it kind of makes sense, right? Because once you get hooked on orchids, it's really easy to go down the rabbit hole. But just like with any plant, it's also easy to make a few mistakes along the way, especially when you're new. So in today's video, we're going to talk about 5 common mistakes that people make when growing orchids. We'll break down what you need to avoid to keep your orchid not just alive, but actually thriving. So tap that like button like you're missing an orchid leaf. Let's get into it. Here's mistake number 1, overwatering. So here's the thing. Orchids are epiphytes, which means in nature, they grow on trees, not in soil. And because of that, their roots need to breathe. If you're watering your orchid every few days just to be safe, you might actually be suffocating it. A lot of people don't realize this. At one point, I thought I had to keep the potting mix moist all the time, but what ended up happening was root rot. The leaves got floppy, not because they were dry, but because the roots were literally decaying in soggy bark. So what you want to do instead is water only when the medium has dried out. Stick your finger in the bark. If it feels dry about an inch deep, you're good to water. If it still feels moist, wait. Also, consider switching to clear orchid pots if you haven't already. They let you see the roots directly. Silvery roots mean it's time to water. Green roots, leave them alone for now. And trust me, if you're unsure, it's better to underwater an orchid than overwater. Mistake number 2, using regular potting soil. You wouldn't plant a cactus in a swamp, right? So don't plant an orchid in regular potting mix. Sounds obvious, but it's a mistake a lot of people make. In fact, some orchids at big box stores come already potted in dense, moisture-retaining peat moss. That stuff holds on to water like crazy, and orchids, they hate that. Orchid roots need airflow. They need chunky, well-draining medium like bark, perlite, charcoal, or sphagnum moss in moderation. So if your orchid came in dense soil or a mystery mix, it's totally fine to repot it into something more breathable. I repotted this orchid about 6 months ago using a blend of medium grade for bark, a little perlite, and some charcoal to keep things airy. The result, roots started popping within a couple weeks. You don't have to be a pro to do this, just make sure your pot has drainage and your mix lets water run through quickly. Mistake number 3, ignoring the roots. Now let's talk about those roots for a second, because they're not just there to hold the plant up. Orchid roots are one of the best indicators of plant health, but they're often overlooked. You'll see these thick, silvery green roots growing out of the pot sometimes, and people ask, should I cut those off? The answer is no. Those are aerial roots in the wild. That's how orchids cling to tree bark and absorb moisture from the air. Cutting them off can stress the plant, so instead of cutting them, just let them do their thing. If the roots look white and firm, great. If they're green, they're hydrated. But if they look brown, mushy, or smell bad, those are rotting roots, and you will want to trim those during a repot. I made the mistake of potting one to deep once, thinking it would hold the orchid better, but all it did was smother the roots and encourage rot. Now I keep the crown high and the roots loose and airy. Mistake number 4, not enough light or way too much. Let's talk lighting, because orchids are picky, not complicated, just specific. Most orchids like bright, indirect light, and a lot of people assume that sticking one in a dark hallway or near a north-facing window is fine. But orchids will not bloom without enough light. Here's a quick test. Check the leaves. If they're dark green, like deep emerald, the plant probably isn't getting enough light. If they're yellowish or have reddish patches, it's probably getting too much sun. What you want is a lighter apple green color. That's the sweet spot. This orchid sits by a south-facing window with a sheer curtain. It gets bright light but no direct sunburn, and it's bloomed 3 times this year already. If you don't have a great window, grow lights are a good backup, but make sure they're full spectrum and not too close to the plant. Mistake number 5, forgetting about dormancy and rest. And here's one that catches almost everyone off guard, especially if you're new to orchids. After an orchid blooms, it's going to enter a rest period. It might drop its flowers, it might sit there looking like it's doing nothing. But it's not dead, it's just resting. This is totally normal. In fact, it's necessary. Orchids need this period to recharge and build up energy for the next bloom cycle. But this is where a lot of people panic. They think the plant is dying and they either overwater it, over-fertilize it, or throw it out entirely. Don't do that. Instead, reduce watering slightly. Hold off on the fertilizer. Give it bright light and keep the humidity steady. Some orchids can rest for a month or 2. Others take a bit longer, but patience here is key. I almost tossed one out last year because it looked dead, but it was just doing its thing. 3 months later, boom. Brand new flower spike. Bonus tip: repotting at the right time. Quick bonus tip before we wrap up: know when to repot. Most orchids only need repotting every 1 to 2 years, but timing matters. The best time to repot is right after the orchid has finished blooming, not during or right before. That's when the plant is naturally shifting its energy back to root and leaf growth. If you repot during a bloom, you risk shocking the plant and losing the flowers. It's also a good time to check for root health. Clean out old medium and trim off anything rotten, and remember, orchids aren't fragile little porcelain dolls. They're tough, resilient plants that just need the right conditions to thrive. Once you dial those in, you'll see why so many people fall in love with them. So, there you have it, 5 orchid growing mistakes to avoid. From overwatering to poor lighting to just not understanding what the plant is telling you, these are the kinds of things that trip up even experienced growers from time to time. But once you get past them, orchids really aren't difficult at all. I've got orchids in nearly every room, on bookshelves, hanging from windows, even in the bathroom where the humidity is perfect, and every time one blooms, it still feels like magic. If you've struggled with orchids in the past, don't give up. Just try making a few small changes and see what happens. You might be surprised at how quickly they bounce back. If you found this video helpful, give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing for more orchid tips, plant care, and grow along updates. Until next time, happy growing, and keep those orchids thriving.